Okay, today I'm gonna show you an example of React Redux so that you can see how the React Redux could do global state management. We have a React Redux project from last class, and we're gonna add another component on top of it so that these two components could communicate with each other by React Redux. So it is React Redux final. Okay, so first I'm gonna add a person component. Okay, in the container folder we create a person so export React Redux person, and this is person component. Get rid of this, and we just use the same style in this component. Dev element style, right? So add this to now we have the second component right here, and we can use Redux to let these two components communicate with each other and use their public states, right? This person component, and in this person component we have some input field. Placeholder says enter name, enter age, and there is a button. This dot add person, so add person. Okay. So you can just add some new persons right here in this person component, right? Okay. So we don't export this for the moment, just want to show you how the structure of this application is, and then what we need to do, we need to correct the file structure. What does this mean? So we don't need this component anymore, right? So because we put all those UI and components into one folder, and in this folder, because now we have two components at the same time, right? So if we create some person action or person reducer file in this folder, we're gonna mess up the file structure. So we need specific action folder and reducer folder to separate the action and reducer files with each other, and we can rename it as count. So it means count action, right? So in the actions folder, so we don't need action anymore. We just use count as the name. And same here, right? So now we need to create reducer and action folder, correct path. So we have created a new folder, so we need to correct the path here. So action is not in the count action. Actions count. Okay. Counts store. Count reducer. There's no more count reducer. It's reducer count. And in action, okay, now we have correct the path. Yeah, it just works, right? Okay, no problem. And we need to add props and finish person component, add props or create actions and create reducers, export UI. Okay. Yeah, don't doesn't matter the order, right? So we just count back to the container in the person. We have a person action and person reducer, right? So if we look at this, eventually we want to display the persons right here, right, under these two input fields. So the person should be person state should be an array, right? So it is very reasonable. So person export default function person reducer and we have a previous state which is an empty array, right? And an action, same thing here. So const tab action data action switch tab add person. So when we add a new person, the data should be a person object. So I'm gonna show you. Yeah, it should be a person object. Anyway, I just right here. It's very straightforward. I think you can understand it. So return data, which is a person object, then dot 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 create state. And state is a person's array, right? Person array. So we return a new array so that we can display the list, loop the list so that it could be displayed on the page, right? Now we have reducer and we need an action for person. Oh, person. Yeah. So what should it be in export const person action? Instead of this, it should be a data, and the data is the, as you can see here, enter name, enter age. Besides these two fields, we need an ID for a person, right? So the data is person object, so we need to return this is return tab add person, and data is data, right? So we can dispatch this action, this person object, to person array, right? And of course, back to the person container, we need to export default connect and account, right? So we don't need this. This is person, and we need two parameters here. The first is map state to prob, and the second is map dispatch to prob. So state and the return an object count state. Second is an object add person. This is the callback function so that you can add new person to the person's list, right? And this is add a person action. So actions, yeah. Let's do add person action, right? So we want to use it, we need to connect from React text, import action, add person action from redux action person. Now I think we can use it. So now here's come to there's a new problem. So do you think the person will work? It doesn't, because we haven't added this reducer to the store, right? We have a store object, and this store has it, which stores all those global states. But we have only a count reducer, and we don't have a person. We haven't added person reducer yet. So how do we add it? So because now there are two reducers, can we do person reducer? No. So you need to use another function called combine reducers, because now you have two reducers, person, right? How do we combine these two? So have a reducer, or all reducers, or unified reducer, or just reducer. So we combine reducers, we in this reducer we have to pass an object into it, and what you have passed is the value of this component. What does this mean? So where do we get the value? We get the value from count reducer, right? So if there is no value, count reducer will initiate one for us, and if there is a value action, the count reducer will return new state, new value for us, right? So persons comes from person reducer. So let's review this diagram again. So you can see here, so after reducer there is a new state, right? So we just pass this state to store right here, right? We create a store. We need a state to create a store. Where do we get the state? We get the state from reducer, either initialize one or get the action and manipulate the existing state. Okay. So now we just pass the command reducer here, so we can use it. As you can see here, it says objects are not valid as a React child. It means that what we have rendered on the page is an object instead of a value. Why? Because now you just attach this count property on the state. So right here, you in the count. This is the person component. So you cannot just use state directly. Instead, you need to return the value, the property of the state. So it is persons, right? Look at this again. When we create a store, the state, this object is similar to the state object, and we add a person property on it, which represent person's array, and count property on the state, which is the value of the count, right? So now if we want to use it, so suppose I want to display it, and this dot again prop dot count, persons, right? Because in this part, this is the state persons has been passed into the UI container component as a prop, right? And this prop name is persons. So now we have persons, we have map, and each person, and we return person.name. So of course we need a key, right? So key person.id, and we also wanted to display person.age. Yeah, it doesn't work yet. So because we have no persons yet, so we need to add some persons on it. So now I have already defined this add person, right? So we want to add person. It shouldn't be, because we have initialized one, so there must be something wrong here. For an object with keys, count persons. let's just add this to count as well. So this is not state, this is count. Same error, so there must be something here that we so this one should be the store.getState. State is an object, and we put the object on top of the page, right? So instead of the state, we get the count, right? Yeah, now it works. We haven't defined this function, add person function yet, so we need a function called add person. Click and add person to persons list. So we have a prop called add person, and what we need to pass is a person object, right? So this person action, we could do age. Let's just use data for the moment, right? Okay. Let's just pass a object directly, object ID, and again we use nano ID, right? So name this dot name dot value, age this dot age dot value. So we want to get the value, we need a ref. This dot age. No. Current node. This dot name. Current node. Age. Right. Of course, we need to import nano ID from nano ID, just in case we come to the package and we're correct, there is a nano ID. Yeah, okay, we check if there is a nano ID here, so we just pass this to obj. Let's test. Okay, 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3. Okay, so after this function we put the value as empty string. Okay, and now the second function has works, but we don't want to create option. We don't want to create yeah, we just put this for the moment. Okay, so now we have already finished the person component, and two components communicate with each other. Right? So how do we put these two components communicate with each other? That's really simple. As you can see here, so now we put we add a prop to give it a prop to a UI component. and this property name is persons, right? And which we get is from state object. So suppose I have a count, right? I just get a count here. So I can display it here. From component this.props.count. Yep. So let's do add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minus. Right? It's fairly simple. So same thing here. In the count component, we can get some. Let's do total count of persons from component below this dot props dot persons dot length. So we need to pass these persons to this UI component. So you can see here the total component of the person from component below. So add 3, 1. Total count persons from component below. So it should display. There must be something wrong here. Add person. So persons state.persons, we have passed this to these props persons dot length. Okay, length. Yeah, as you can see here, total person 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? Okay. Yeah, currently we didn't do any input check, so there are some input string, but it doesn't matter. I just want to show you how to get the global state from other component, right? So number 5 is optimize code, right? So trigger object variable short. So as you can see here, let's just start from this count, container component, right? So you have increment action, decrement, async increment action. So we can trigger a shorthand by this. So we don't need this action. We don't need this action. We don't need this action. Yep. We don't need this. So now they have same name, right? Increment. So okay, let's take a look. Async is not exported. Okay, so we forget actions count, right? So action no, action no, action no, action no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Test, right? So after the count we come to this by the same logic, right? So we don't need this person action, not person action anymore, and we come to actions person, right? Okay, right, so you can just remove this, right? It looks like pretty clean. The code is very clean. We have count. Let's take a look at this count person, count person, count store. Okay, so there is one thing that we can do to optimize the reducer file. Use index as combine reducer file. So what does this mean? So you have, suppose you have many reducers, right? So when you use this reducer, you just combine this right here, right? So this is not quite right, because in the store file, what do? We just create a store, that's it. So what do we normally do? We create a index.js, and we just copy all this, cat all this from store file, and I will count to the reducer, right? Export default cast. So we need to import combine reducer, right? So index import combine reducers from redux. Okay, now we have export this, and right here we can simply use it. So reducer from reducers, that's it. Okay, so right here is not React Redux count, it is count, it is person. 1 2 3 4 test, right? Okay, yeah, this is how we use React Redux to manage global state, right? So we have you combine all the reducers together, and when we pass the prop to the UI component, we pass an object, right? So we change several things so that these two components can communicate with each other, and this might be a little bit complex or messy when you first time learn it, so it just takes some time. Okay, so this is pretty much about the React Redux final example today.